Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Sarcosuchus here, and today the Versus series is back. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, one of the main series of the channel is back with a contest between some of my favorite reptiles in the game. Just like the title says, today we crown the ultimate Croc in a three-way battle between the Kaprosuchus, the Sarcosuchus, and the Deinosuchus. God, I absolutely love this lineup. Imagine being on a roleplay server and you're part of the swamp people and you pull up with this army composition. Who's gonna stop you? Now, you already know this is more of an in-depth comparison, not just who fights better video, because that's pretty obvious. The Deinosuchus is like twice the size of a Sarco. We're gonna take a look at how they perform in all 7 of our categories: creature design, ease of tame, speed, tankiness, damage, special abilities, and utility. But before we start, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. I dream of getting to 15k by the end of the year, and I would really appreciate your support. By the way, I know I'm late with this one, but a lot has happened in the past few weeks for me. We're officially setting a date for the giveaway, and since I'm giving away 3 Bob's DLCs and 3 Pyromane DLCs, the giveaway will be held on September 5th, just the day after the launch of Aberration. The giveaway will be held over on my Discord and will be live streamed on YouTube in my first ever live stream. Or at least that's what I hope to do. I'm a complete noob when it comes to live streaming. But if you want to get the full experience of Aberration right from the get-go, join my Discord and show up to the stream on September 5th. Time to get back to business. Maximum effort. Let's start with creature design. First we have the Kaprosuchus, a funny looking creature. If you see this thing from afar as a beach bob, you probably don't know what to expect and you don't know what it does, and you're probably not scared of these guys. Their model is okay for a land-dwelling crocodile, but without a roar, the only thing that stand out are those funky looking legs, used for that dreaded jump. Oh, and the colors. They can come in a lot of colors, which is cool. The Sarco, on the other hand, my god, this thing scared the shit out of me when I first saw it in the wild. I love its model, its animation. I'm gonna admit, I'm probably a sucker for this Croc, but I do understand that it's not perfect. The lack of a roar is very annoying, and I also have to admit the barrel roll is not that wow. The Kapro's jump looks a lot cooler, but they do look amazing, and just like the Kapro, they can come in a lot of different colors. The Deinosuchus, guess what? It's another mixed bag. It's by far the largest and most imposing creature here, and it has a damn good roar, as well as cool animations. However, I don't know if this is only on my end, but the model is not that great. I have the texture set to high and the Deinosuchus looks a bit unpolished if you ask me, especially in the snout area. I don't know if that's a texture problem or something caused by the lack of color, since they only have 3 color regions and they only come in shades of green and gray. I'm actually gonna call this a tie, with all 3 creatures being just above average in my opinion. Next we have ease of tame, something a bit less subjective. I'm gonna start by saying all 3 of these creatures are hard to tame, and mainly that's because they share one thing between them. Actually, they share much more than one, but I'm talking about the swamp biome. The swamp is notoriously one of the most dangerous biomes in ARK. 80% of the things in the swamp want to actively kill you. So for each one of them, you will need to either clear the area or lure them in a more favorable area for taming. Starting with the Kapro, this is a regular tranquilize and feed tame, but despite their size and swamp puppy appearance, they are extremely dangerous. They probably have the biggest aggro range among the swamp creature, and they're the hardest to spot in the swamp biome. Sarcos and Dinos are hard to miss thanks to their size, but the Kapro keeps a low profile when submerged in water and when hidden in the nearby mangrove trees. And of course, they have their jump ability, which dismounts the player from most small to medium sized mounts and most of the time leads to a swift but painful death. Now you can block this jump using a shield, but you still need a plan B because that shield won't last forever. All these 3 combined plus the swamp biome make the Kapro a very hard to tame dino. My advice is to either trap them, shoot them from a high point using a flyer, or lure them in an open space where you can see them, because if they see you first, it's usually already too late. However, not everything is bad. High-level Kapros usually take around a dozen of trank arrows from a regular crossbow, especially in the late game when you have better tranquilizer and you're no longer traversing the swamp in cloth armor riding a raptor. These guys are pretty easy to tame. PvP players might need some in the endgame as well. Just remember that no flyer besides the Deinosuchus can pick them up. Yeah, they have more drag weight than a freaking stego. Moving on. The Sarcos are much easier to spot compared to the Kapro and can also be found on some beaches, which makes the taming process a lot easier. Although the Sarco takes double the trank ammo compared to the Kapro, the taming process is easier, because you can outrun the Sarco on land. The death roll, even though it's a grab attack, is nowhere near as dangerous as the Kapro's jump. And they also take the same tier of kibble as the Kapro, and their saddle is unlocked 4 levels earlier. But because of their size, they're hard to trap in Ascended, and if they manage to get into water when they're running from you, congratulations, you just wasted your ammo. Good luck chasing a Sarco in water. So just try to lure them as far away inland as you can and you probably won't have any troubles. The Deinosuchus is a different story. They're a passive tame, and I usually hate aggressive tames that have passive taming methods. But despite being the largest out of the 3 competitors today, the Deinosuchus is actually the Croc with the shortest aggro range. Damn, if you put a ghillie suit on, you're basically invisible to them. And even if you do aggro them, just like the Sarco, you can outrun them. The difficulty of this taming comes from the amount of food you need to feed this thing to tame. I wouldn't use anything other than mutton and superior kibble. But if you can get this thing out of the swamp, the taming process is quite easy. And by the time you hit level 74 for that saddle, you probably have all the stuff necessary to tame one. Now there's one thing I have to mention that kind of bothers me. You see, the Deinosuchus is the strongest creature in the swamp other than the Deinosuchus. That means usually anything it fights, it kills. Now, because they share spawn points with the Kapro and the Sarco, they usually meet out there in the wild. But the Sarco and the Kapro don't cannibalize on each other. They don't fight between them, which meant you usually could find both of them at the same time in the swamp. Well, not anymore, because the Deinosuchus will kill anything that gets into its aggro range, and thus you end up with swamps looking like this. Now, in the endgame, you might argue that this is a good thing, because you're searching Deinosuchuses anyways. But, you know, it's kind of sad that the other 2 get completely wiped out from existence. Okay, so how do I rank these? I honestly think the Kapro is the hardest to tame early on. The Sarco probably the easiest, and the Deinosuchus tied with the Kapro, but for different reasons. Basically, even though the process is not complicated, you still have to spend a lot of time in a very dangerous area. And let's be honest, all 3 of them are pretty easy to tame in the late game. So the Sarco gets 2 points, while the others get only 1. Well, it's time to get into those numbers, with speed. And I present you the custom-built speed testing facility made for this episode. We have both a running track and a swimming track, which will allow us to test these guys in both conditions. We're gonna start with the land test with the Kapro, which is probably the favorite for this test, thanks to those hind legs. Though I am afraid a bit that it will run out of stamina before finishing the test. Contrary to my expectations, the Kapro finished the course in 20 seconds with 225 stamina left. Honestly, I expected a better time with less stamina from the Swamp Puppy. But if we use 2 jumps, we get a 10.5 seconds time with 140 stamina left, which is much better. Next is the Sarco, which has a reputation of not being the quickest land mount out there. I also added a turn to somewhat take into consideration their turning radius as well. And the Sarco manages to finish in 16.5 seconds with 110 stamina left. That's actually not bad for a slow creature. Lastly, we have the Deinosuchus, which I definitely don't think is that bad on land, thanks to their size, which allows them to overcome obstacles that would usually stop the Sarco. The Deino managed to finish in 18 seconds with 80.5 stamina left, which was expected for such a large creature. Okay, now moving to the underwater test, all 3 were quite impressive. The Kapro managed to finish the run in the same 20 seconds with 227 points of stamina left. Clearly, they're very good when it comes to stamina efficiency. But this time, the Sarco just shatters the competition with a 7 seconds lap time and 290 stamina left. And this doesn't even take into consideration its instant stamina regen. The Deinosuchus once again surprised me with a 12 seconds lap time and 162 stamina left. Well, how are we scoring these results? Basically, I decided to score them separately. First, on land the Kapro gets 2 points for having the best possible time and the best stamina consumption, and the Sarco gets 1 point for being the fastest when it comes to just running. In water, obviously the Sarco gets 2 points, it wasn't even a contest, but the second place goes to the Deinosuchus for being much faster than the Kapro despite its size. Okay, speed was actually pretty close, but the next one I guarantee will not be close. It's time for Tankiness. Starting off with the Kapro, pretty straightforward, no damage reduction, only 200 base health points and 40 extra per wild level, nothing too impressive, definitely a creature not made to tank damage. The Sarco is a decent step up, basically doubling the health to 400 and 80 extra points per wild level. Still no damage reduction or healing ability, so let's move on. The Deinosuchus though, oh boy. 1000 base health and 200 extra per wild level. This puts them really close to the Rex in terms of stats. And that's not all. The Deinosuchus has a 50% damage reduction on its head. This helps in most situations as long as you're fighting back. But wait, there's more. The Deinosuchus also reduces the damage from different types of melee and ranged weapons. You can see in the table that it does vary a bit, but it can be very useful in PvP, because these reductions also stack with the head reduction, meaning you got a pretty decent soaker here. Before we score them, there's one more thing to point out. All of these Crocs, despite being reptiles, lack the oxygen stat. By the way, most reptiles cannot breathe underwater, just so you know. But hey, I like the lack of oxygen stats, so I won't complain. Now this has two implications. Obviously they cannot drown and they won't surface when dismounted underwater, and will have fewer wasted points. Basically, you can have more points into stats that actually matter because you don't have 20 or so points wasted into oxygen. Meaning that, in practice, higher level crocodiles can have higher stats compared to creatures with similar base stats. Well, as I said, this category is a landslide win for the Deinosuchus, with the Sarco also beating the Kapro quite convincingly. Up next is damage. First, the Kaprosuchus actually has a good biting animation. This results in a 61 DPS at level 1. Its jump does almost double damage as a regular attack, and its grab only does 1 damage. Keep in mind that all its attacks apply a stamina draining debuff, though that one won't be taken into consideration in this category, since it's not a source of damage. Second, we have the Sarco, and my god, this thing attacks slow. Even though its bite has much more damage than the Kapro, its DPS is actually lower, at 58. The death roll only does a bit more damage, and the same for the leap. However, if the Sarco is swimming, its attack speed is more than doubled, resulting in a whopping 117 DPS. So again, the Sarco really excels underwater. The Deinosuchus though, it's basically in its own league on land, with 134 DPS at level 1. We also have access to the Gigabyte, a charged bite that deals massive damage when used. Surprisingly though, the Gigabyte does the same damage as you would do by only using the regular bite during the charging time, at least when it comes to direct damage. Surprise surprise, it's not called the Gigabyte for nothing. If you reach 100% charge, you will also apply a bleed effect, which can greatly boost your DPS in practice. You also have access to the Stealth Whip to deal with any predators attacking you from the side, and both the Sarco and the Deino can turn on the spot to attack anything to their side or back. This once again is a no contest. The Sarco gets pretty close to the Deino in water, but when you also factor in the bleed damage, yeah, the winner is clear. Deinosuchus 2 points, Sarco 1 point for that impressive water DPS, and Kapro 1 point for its land DPS. Next we have special abilities. Starting with the Kapro, its most important special ability is its jump ability, which allows it to cover land fast for some extra stamina and to jump over pits that you might encounter in caves. The jump also grabs small to medium creatures and dismounts riders, making it a very good ability for PvP. The Kapro can also grab creatures without jumping, including small to mid-sized creatures like the Diplocolus, Bilzebufo, Perlovia or the Megalania. Being a swamp dweller means that leeches run away from this creature unless provoked. And lastly, all of its attacks trigger a stamina decreasing buff, which even works on wild creatures. Obviously, this can be a very useful ability in PvP against ridden dinos, but it's even better when you want to tame a fast carnivore like the Spino, especially now that traps don't work as well as they used to in ARK Survival Evolved. Wild dinos don't recover stamina until tamed, so in theory you could drain the stamina of a Spino or UT, feed it something to heal it, and then tranquilize it. You could also argue that the lack of oxygen stat is a special ability for the aforementioned reasons, as well as the ability to use weapons on its back, which all three competitors have. Moving to the Sarco, its proficiency in water is its most impressive ability. Fast attack speed, instant stamina regeneration, no oxygen bar, insane swim speed, turning on the spot, and the ability to use weapons off its back work perfectly together. Just like the Kapro, it's able to scare leeches away as well as piranhas. His lunge and death roll are meh at best, with death roll being able to grab humans and creatures up to the size of a raptor, but you know, not everything needs to be extra good. The Deinosuchus has its own damage dealing special abilities, like the Tail Whip to create space when surrounded, and the Bleed Inflicting Gigabite, capable of tearing through heavily armored creatures. Just like the Sarco, it can scare off piranhas, can turn on the spot using the bite, and allows usage of weapons from its back. Its swimming ability is interesting. You can toggle between swimming only on the surface, in case you want to dismount and stand on its back, or free diving mode. Lastly, the damage reduction perks could also be included here, since they're after all special abilities. I think all of them have useful special abilities, with each Croc being specialized in one area. The Kapro with taming and land traveling, the Sarco with underwater traveling and combat, and the Deinosuchus with overall combat capability. But if we're talking straight buttons and passives, the Deino and Kapro are better. 1 point for them and 0 for the Sarco. And our last category, utility. Starting off with the Kapro. First of all, it has decent mobility both on land and in water and a jump ability, making him a decent day-to-day mount and cave dino. The weight capacity is not great though, so keep that in mind. In PvE, arguably its best use is taming carnivore creatures, thanks to its stamina draining ability, which basically makes them unable to run. In PvP, you can add to this the ability to dismount riders, which can easily be a battle-winning move. Lastly, it can be your underwater mount in the beginning and help you get your first purely water creature, since you can shoot off its back. But the Sarco is the specialized Croc when it comes to anything regarding water. This thing is one of the fastest tames you can use underwater while technically being a land creature. It's been my go-to creature whenever I need to tame anything in the ocean, simply because it can outswim anything and can also kill most things as long as you're not completely surrounded. Unlike the Kapro, the Sarco's insane swim speed allows you to basically free dive to deep sea caves where you can collect rare resources like silica pearls and oil. Plus, its low profile allows it to swim in most rivers on whatever map you're playing. This, paired with its decent weight, make the Sarco a great day-to-day / exploration mount for maps like the Island, the Center, or the mod map Forglar. Lastly, as I have proven in the past, the Sarco is capable of fighting bosses such as the Alpha Megapithecus. The Deinosuchus, on the other hand, is clearly the most combat specialized Croc in the game. It has a huge health pool and can deal a ton of damage using its multitude of attacks. The bleed damage makes it even viable against large health pool targets like the Giga or the Titanosaur, or heavily armored targets like the Deathworm, because yes, they spawn on Scorched Earth as well. They can also fill the same role as the Sarco as your main aquatic tame, since they also allow the usage of weapons from their backs, but with a bit more emphasis on battle power rather than speed and agility. That extra battle power makes them great for clearing underwater caves and hunting down creatures for their apex drops. And of course, they are super good when it comes to boss battles. In PvP, they can be used for armies, and you can even breed them as soakers, thanks to their reduction and large health pool. Once again, I find all three of them pretty useful in their own way, so I will give them 1 point each. Final score: Kapro 7, Sarco 9 and Deinosuchus 9. Wow, this was even closer than I expected. And it honestly makes sense, because each one of these Crocs is specialized in another area. You can have your Kapro for caving and land taming, Sarco for taming in the water and aquatic traveling, and the Deino for, well, killing things. When you also add up the other swamp creatures like the Baryonyx, the Spino and the Rhinognatha, playing as a swamp tribe in a role-playing PvP server sounds more and more tempting. But let me know what you think about that. And since Aberration is knocking on the door, let me know what other Versus episodes you wanna see. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you wanna get a shout out at the end of the video just like Curly Tones here, there's a channel membership button that you might wanna check out. Until next time, Spartacus out.